Alright, we put our grip back on. So now we have our NME. We can now take a look at the high pressure reg if we want to do any maintenance of it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to unscrew the reg from the collar. If you have to use a strap wrench to pull it off, you can. Now, so here's our regulator. What we can do if we ever want to do any sort of general maintenance on the regulator, what we have to do is unscrew the velocity adjuster. So, with the appropriate Allen key, we can then take the adjustment screw, and back it all the way out. Once you've backed it all the way out, you can then take an Allen key if you want and just push out the meat, all the internals. So what you're going to have is you're going to see spring and the main O-ring, and on the bottom you're going to have the plate. So, easiest way to clean all this up is just take a rag and clean off the plate, which is going to sit on the bottom. Now, as you'll be able to tell by looking at the plate, one side will usually be flat and clean. This will be the side that actually the spring will press against. And the other side, you'll see an indentation. That indentation is from the velocity adjustment screw. So you know that that part faces down. So if I'm going to put it back in the container, here's my container, here is the part that has the indentation. I'm going to take it, have that on the bottom, and I'm going to drop it down like so. And I mean, it's not the end of the world if it's switched the other way. Okay, so I've dropped that in. Now what's the next thing? The next thing is my spring. Now my spring has some buildup and some residue, some grossness on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean that off. Some people have been saying that they've been greasing their spring, putting a little bit on there just to make it work a little bit better. I've done both, again, and haven't really noticed the difference. But that shouldn't dissuade other people who have found maybe success doing it one way as opposed to the other. That shouldn't stop them from continuing to do what they do. I mean, putting grease on a spring, usually a good thing. So, I put a little bit of grease on it, and I'm going to put the spring right there. Now the next thing that we have to look at is this O-ring, in fact. So, it's got some residue, we're going to clean it off. And, as with all O-rings in the NME, or at least everyone I can think of, after you've cleaned it, you want to lube it with some Dow 55. Now this O-ring is a pretty big O-ring, it's pretty thick, so I need a little bit more than with the standard O-ring that would go on the base of the HPR, the number 15 O-ring, which was a little bit bigger. So now that I put a little bit of grease on it, it's ready to go back in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spring, and I'm going to take my top piece, put it like so, and then what I'm going to do is drop it back in, and give this thing a little hefty little push there, and now it's back in. This thing's ready to go. So now what I'm going to do, take my velocity adjustment screw, and screw it in. Now I've found the easiest way to get a consistent velocity and to run it around 290, your NME, is to screw it in so that it's almost flush. You don't want it all the way in, but usually about one thread or maybe two threads showing. That's about it. I see some people who have, well, this, they'll have, you know, 3 threads, or they'll have quite a bit showing, and then they'll have their LPR jacked up to 100, and they run it that way. It's much easier just to increase this pressure and then drop your LPR to 60. Makes it run a little bit smoother. So I'm just going to screw this in. I've got about one thread showing there. And again, check this, which we've already done, but if it needs to be lubed, lube it. And now, screw it back into your sleeve, like so. And once that's done, you can then take it, since we're done everything else, and just tighten it down.